On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse Q&A, we discuss the things you lose from narcissistic abuse. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse Q&A, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and today we are going to be discussing the things you lose from narcissistic abuse. But before we get to that, if you want to be a guest on our Survivor Story episodes, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Top of the page, there's a button that says Guest Form. When you click on that button, it takes you to our Guest Form page. There, you can read all of our instructions and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the Submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. So today we are going to be discussing the things you lose from narcissistic abuse. And we're going to be going through all these different things that you lose. We're going to explain some of them. And we're also going to be having some quotes that we found on the internet about these specific topics that were from survivors as well. And that can kind of give you more of a feeling attached to things like sense of self or self-worth, that things that you lost. So let's just jump right into this episode, because I think this episode will help, validate a lot of people's feelings when it comes to the things that they lost, that they are not alone. And it can open your eyes to other things that you may have lost that you really haven't seen yet. So the first thing on my list here of things that you might have lost is yourself, or your sense of self-worth as well. When it comes to losing yourself, sense of self-worth, here are some things that people have said. So the first one that we have here is, slowly I was being taken away from who I always knew I was in my past, a strong young woman with firm beliefs. And I went from that person to being someone who said, I know this isn't right, but it's just so much. I don't want to deal with this right now. I can't handle this. I just don't care. But I had lost myself so much that I was just gone. You don't even know that you lose yourself. Making the simplest decision seems so difficult. I want myself back, but I was just so lost so long ago. And another person's quote that I found was, I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know how to leave. I truly feel alone in all of this. Like I'm locked all alone in a tiny room with only a window that overlooks a beautiful garden. In this garden, I see everyone I know walking around, talking, drinking, laughing, having a great time. But I'm crying and banging on the window, screaming for someone to notice me, hear me, see me. But no one does. And then I see him in the crowd and he sees me, looks at me for a few seconds, and then he smiles his evil smile and then turns and walks away to mingle some more. That one was with a lot of imagery, and you really feel what this person is going through, how they've lost themselves and how isolated they are. Another quote that I found is, what I lost is exactly what my abuser wanted and always strive for, which was for me to lose myself. And I lost my pride and my dignity. It feels like a record album that keeps skipping. It's just stuck in one spot, repeating over and over. I just haven't picked the needle up and set it down just past the scratch in this song of life. I've lost my entire life. I've lost who I am. And in another quote I found, it says, I still feel like I'm locked inside layers of numbness, resentment, rejection, and hurt. I still don't feel like myself, and I don't know how to get out. So you have a lot of feelings of losing oneself, who they are as a person, and this helplessness that is going on. And there's a lot of crazy making that has gone into this process as well. And when it comes to loss of sense of self and self-worth, from the brainwashing, it can destroy your sense of self-worth in a huge way. You just no longer feel like you are the person you were when the relationship began. And many of you who are listening struggle to recognize who you are in the mirror, because a lot of people feel like the reflection staring back at them isn't them anymore. And this can create trust issues, which we'll get into, and second guessing yourself. And you just might feel like you are not good enough and that you did something to cause this abuse in the first place. And this can go into shame and embarrassment, and it can really stop you from reaching out for help, as we heard in some of those examples, those quotes, like someone who's like behind a window and watching everyone outside that window. You're isolated from everything. And we'll get into, everything that we're going to discuss today is really an offshoot of, losing yourself, and trouble making decisions becomes a really big thing. And, the loss of self-worth as a whole, you start questioning that. Obviously, again, trust issues become a big issue. So now let's talk about the loss of trust in others, the trust in oneself, and the trust in falling in love again, or the concept of love again. And the first quote that we have here is, "He was my partner for 16 years. He made promises and vows to me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give my trust to someone like that again. If your husband can betray you so easily, how can I trust anyone?" And the next one we have here is, "I eventually came to realize that I couldn't make the right decision. After all, he's the smart one. He knows everything. He tells me he knows everything. He tells everyone else he knows everything and that he is the best at everything he does. I believed him. I still believe him in a lot of ways, and it's hard to shake that." So that quote right there is having to do with like listening to the truth teller in your life, and the truth teller being the one that you're supposed to be trusting, and their voice is the one that is telling you the truth, and your voice is, kind of secondary, and maybe it's not always correct, you're being told. So you lose the trust in other people, but you're also at the same time losing trust in yourself. And another quote that we have is, "I lost my ability to trust. I have not been in another relationship since the ex. I have not dated, and I was divorced 6.5 years ago." So there you can see that this lack of trust can take a very long time to come back. And for some people, they lose it for forever, it seems. And then another quote is, I thought what we had was special. It was special to me. I thought it was special to him, but not so much. He was with his new supply within a matter of weeks. This has made me feel like my love was cheap and easily replaced, because for him, it was. So for a lot of people in domestic violence or narcissistic abuse, domestic abuse, after the relationship is over, to be replaced so easily and so quickly is hurtful, and you feel disrespected in so many ways. And, you thought you knew the person you were with, and in the end, you feel like you didn't know them at all, that they could just move on like that. And you lose faith in love, and you lose faith in other people and who they are as people. And then the last quote we have for this one is, "They were everything I always wanted, but nothing was real. How can I trust my decisions when they all seemed correct? It feels like the only thing I can do is just to avoid." And that goes to, trusting yourself, because there's a lot of people out there when it comes to the loss of trust, and the loss of trust in oneself is, a lot of people say, trust your gut. You should have trusted your gut. But in many cases for people, your gut wasn't saying anything. You were with someone who was just conning you the whole entire way. And you believed everything they said because there was no reason not to believe them. And you did everything correctly. You fell in love, and then you were just duped. So a lot of people in the aftermath feel that their ticker might be wrong. The way they judge things is completely wrong, because at this point, your ticker for this situation of judgment and trusting people is kind of out the window. It's like a compass that's gone haywire, and you don't know what is what anymore. And you lose trust in others, you lose trust in love and in your own decision making, and trust in yourself on how you're kind of going through life. And this can not just be in relationships, but decisions as a whole. It could affect everything going forward. So this is a big one when it comes to the loss of trust, when it comes to domestic violence and narcissistic abuse.
Between the kids being home and hosting, everything in our house gets used up in summer. With Instacart, I can save money by stocking up on all my favorite summer brands. I save time by getting everything delivered in as fast as an hour. And I save myself a sink full of dirty dishes by stocking up on paper plates for the annual summer cookout. Save more on summer essentials? Spend more time enjoying summer. Add summer to cart. Download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
So up next, we have the loss of self-respect. And we have one quote for this. And this one is, "My dignity was assaulted and vandalized when I let someone else define me." And that was a really interesting quote. To me, you are, in a lot of cases, the abuser is figuring out how to get your worth put into their hands, your competency put into their hands. And once it's in their hands, they can really do anything they want with it. They can toy around and play around. And a lot of people have a lot of loss of self-respect. There's the shame that kind of is going on here. They feel shame that this all happened, and they have this loss of respect for themselves. And it's not something that can easily be fixed. And, it is something that's very painful for someone to go through and feel when they really start to go down that rabbit hole. It's, you didn't do anything wrong. If this happened to you, the people you're dealing with are manipulators, and they know how to get you to put your worth into their hands, and they're looking for those things. And a lot of times the first things they're doing in the love bombing stage is, buttering up the thing they eventually want to take away. But unfortunately, that shame and loss of self-respect is something really big, and it's hurtful. And, it takes a long time to go through all of that pain and heal from it. And up next on our list is the loss of self-esteem and confidence, and also the ability to problem solve. And that's due to the crazy making. And this can be linked to self-worth and self-respect. And a quote that we have for this is, "I was told I was unworthy, unstable, and unwanted by the only person in the world whose opinion mattered. I lived my life through their eyes. More and more I gave into their low opinion of me." And this comes back to them being the truth teller in your life, and them manipulating you into believing what they are saying, and having your worth put into their hands, your competency put into their hands, a lot of different things put into your hands, your self-esteem put into their hands, and them being able to push and pull and tug like a puppet master, and creates that, unstableness, and it creates a loss of self-esteem, a loss of confidence, and really makes you go crazy in so many ways, because it's part of the whole process of destroying the sense of self. And then another quote that we have for this one from an abuse survivor is, "I don't know what's what anymore. I can't even make decisions. I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong, because I was told I was wrong for so long. I freeze and nothing gets done." And this has a lot to do with everything we just mentioned, and the ability to problem solve. A lot of time with trauma, people have traumatic stuff that's going on in their brain. And I've talked to many people, and even telling a story becomes difficult. There's a lot of jumping that's going on when it comes to trying to converse and tell a story. And it can really muddle your brain when it comes to just doing basic things in life, and even problem solving things become very, very difficult. And when that happens, and your brain's not functioning like it once was because of all the crazy making and the brainwashing and the gaslighting and the eroding of the self-esteem and self-confidence, that adds to it. If your brain's not functioning like that, you kind of think you might be broken from it, which then kind of goes down the rabbit hole of, another big hit on the loss of self-esteem and confidence that this person that's telling me all these things might be right, that I'm not a smart person and I'm not able to do this and I'm not able to do that. So it kind of feeds in here in this vicious cycle. And this happens to so many people. If it's happening to you, you are not alone. It's just a very common thing that happens. And my heart goes out to everyone who is dealing with this and this real big vicious cycle. And the next one on our list is the loss of happiness and joy. So we have a couple quotes here from abuse survivors. One is, I was never allowed to feel good about myself. I did not measure up. I fell below the minimum standards, and I was reminded of it constantly. I never really got my joy back. To this day, nothing is fun. So I do nothing fun. It is a waste of time and effort. And that's sad right there. The abuser has really taken, the joy out of this person's life. They beat them down so much that they weren't able to enjoy anything again. And I hope that this person who wrote this is doing better now and has found some joy in the aftermath. During the whole relationship and after the relationship, many survivors feel that they have like a loss of joy and happiness for a very long time. And then another quote that we have here about this is, I lost that feeling of happiness in just the small things in life that once made me happy. I lost the ability to make others happy as it became just so much of an effort for me to pretend I was somebody else. It's just really sad that this happens to so many, survivors. You might get, once you're out of the relationship, you might get a bit of relief right away that you're out, but this loss of joy and happiness is a big issue and something that hopefully a lot of people are dealing with in the aftermath and working through as well. And the next one on our list is emotional stability and regulation. And we don't have a quote for this one, but many people who are dealing with the aftermath of abuse, when it comes to emotional stability and regulation, it's common to suffer mood swings, irritability. You might be finding yourself feeling emotionless in a lot of states. There could be a lot of numbness that might be going on as well. And you might also experience depersonalization, where it feels as though everything around you isn't really accurate with everything that's kind of going on. You might be disassociating. And there's just a lot of stability that just not there in the aftermath of abuse while you're going through abuse at the same time. You've been kept off balance in the relationship with all these pushes and pulls, that your emotions and moods are just like continuously ping-ponging throughout the whole entire relationship. And this can keep going on into the aftermath as well. And it's very difficult to work through, to find your footing once again, because you've just been kept off balance for so long and in so many different situations throughout this abusive relationship. And the next one on our list is the loss of innocence. And we hear this one a lot. So the first quote that we have from an abuse survivor is, the biggest loss I sustained from my abuse was my innocence. I blindly loved a man that intentionally deceived me because I never knew people like that existed. I sacrificed everything to be with him. I was innocent, naive, and vulnerable, and I didn't even know it. I'll never be that innocent again. I can be vulnerable, I can be naive, but I'll never be innocent, and that is sad. And then another quote from a survivor is, my innocence was lost. I believed in the goodness of people, and I accepted people for what they presented me with. I never expected to be deceived at such a terrible level. This type of abuse really does feel like an assault on your emotions, your soul, and it just really feels deeply personal. So when it comes to innocence, there are so many people who have kind of gone through life not knowing that these people existed, like someone in one of these quotes already said. So you have no concept. You might have seen it in a movie or things like that, but you're like, this is a movie. These things don't really exist. These types of people don't really exist, or at least I've never come across one. And when you do come across someone who is like this and you feel it for this first time, and it's not just this cognitive thing, and you feel what it is like to have yourself go through this type of abuse and go through someone who is pretending to be someone else and then becomes someone completely different. Your eyes get opened for the first time in a way that you don't want them opened. The world becomes a scarier place after this. There's a loss of trust after this. And, that innocence about that is gone because now you might be hyper vigilant and trying to see all of these things. All of a sudden, you're looking out for things and acting in a different way. Your life has changed from that point forth. And it's sad that you have to go through that process, that you now have to look at people and not trust them first. And all things like that. It's a really sad occasion when this happens because there's that loss of innocence and this thing about you. It's gone and you'll never get it back. And the world is a completely different place after that. And it just nothing is the same. And it's a big thing that people deal with. And it's a hard thing for people to, really get over because that loss of innocence it's gone forever for most people. And the next one on our list is the loss of security or the loss of optimism, big doom and gloom or loss of control. And a quote we have for this is, "I now fear things can always get worse. I no longer believe that I am secure in the world. I feel that no matter what I do, there will be forces that can take everything away from me, and I have no control over this." And this, this one also can hark back onto the loss of innocence, where now you don't feel secure in the world anymore. You might instead of being an optimist, you would become a pessimist or have a Murphy's Law and like what can go wrong will go wrong. Like that positivity is gone. It's lost because you've lost control once before, or not that you lost control, but someone had control over you, taking it away from you. And having no control is scary. So you're, as I said before, hypervigilance might take over here. There's just a loss of security and the positivity, and that's kind of been stolen from you. So that's where this category comes in, the loss of security, optimism, and control. And the next one we have on our list is the loss of your sanity, the crazy making that can occur in an abusive relationship. And the quote we have here is, "I felt like I was going crazy after all the gaslighting. And even though I know that I was abused and I know that I did nothing wrong, for some reason, I still have moments where I feel guilty, like I could have done more, that maybe things were my fault. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how caught I am. Sometimes I just don't know what's what still, especially when a flashback hits me hard, like right in the face, and just sticks there with nowhere to go, but just to sit there for me to think about it." And so with this one right here, with this quote, this person is just really struggling in the aftermath after all of the gaslighting of just not knowing what is what. And this kind of goes with the loss of control and with the security and innocence. When the crazy making happens, like you don't know what is what anymore. And, it's very hard to discern. I guess trust is also in here because the crazy making, the loss, the sanity, you're not thinking straight. You just don't know what to trust anymore. It all kind of comes full circle here. And gaslighting is a big thing when it comes to sanity. You think you are the one that is going crazy. And in this quote, even in the aftermath here, they're still thinking about the relationship and still think that they might have been the one who's done something wrong, even though it's over. And it's just very difficult to get over because the abuser has done a really good job of making you think that you are the crazy one, that it just kind of continues to carry over into the aftermath of abuse. And, there might not even be post-separation abuse at all, but these flashbacks and, they just did a really good job of manipulating you and have you think that you've gone crazy. And up next on our list is the loss of boundaries. And the quote that we have here is, "I felt selfish for having my own needs. What I hadn't realized is that setting boundaries is in no way selfish, and instead coming from a place of self-love, respect, and worth. I always feared that setting boundaries would lead me to being abandoned and rejected, and not realizing that people who respect our boundaries are the ones who you should keep in our lives, and those that don't should be the ones that are removed." So boundaries is something that people might come into the relationship without, but for the ones that do have boundaries in the relationship, and the abuser does just a very good job of wearing you down and really doing a number on getting rid of your boundaries. They're just very good at manipulating you. Sometimes they do the smashing forward, until they can wear you down, but sometimes they can really finesse you into getting rid of your boundaries. Sometimes those boundaries you don't even know that they're going over your boundaries. They're doing things out of fake concern, like they fake concern of how you're doing. Sometimes they're pretending to say that they love you, and that's why they're worried about your whereabouts. They're crossing these boundaries in ways that you don't know sometimes. And so there's these boundaries you don't know that they're actually crossing and using, concern and love. And then on other occasions, they make it seem like you're the ones that are crossing their boundaries because they'll do a silent treatment or they'll withhold from you. So you jump over a boundary line yourself, and boundaries really get mixed up. And then in the aftermath, your boundaries were completely gone, and you have to figure out how to rebuild everything from scratch again. So when it comes to abuse and domestic violence and narcissistic abuse, the loss of boundaries is a big thing that can happen during the relationship. And it's a pretty difficult thing to, start to establish in the aftermath because you feel selfish, just like that quote said, and it feels wrong to do so. And it's just a really hard thing to get back. Saying no becomes difficult again when you're trying to put your foot down and establish yourself because you might feel guilt or feel that you're selfish. So that is another big one, which is the loss of boundaries when it comes to abuse. And the next ones on our list are the loss of family and friends and children. And this can be twofold. One can be done out of isolation, where you're isolated from them, and in other ways it could be a smear campaign. So here are some quotes that we have from survivors of abuse. "I guess I have a stubborn and unforgiving nature now. I walked away when they believed the gossip and him. Friends worse than family." So that one is just about how a smear campaign can work and how the people in your life, your friends and family, and sometimes children, part of parental alienation can happen as well, that they really start to believe the lies that are told. Another quote we have here is, "I lost the love and respect I once had from my incredible children as they still wonder, where did my mother go? I want my mom back. I lost most of my friends and family members because isolation was easier than to look at them straight in their eyes and tell them, okay, everything is great, while I was still being abused." So right here, this goes to like shame and feeling a lot of shame for what you were going through. And because of that shame, isolation might have occurred. There's a loss of sense of self. You might not be standing up for yourself. You might not just be the same person anymore. And it affects your relationships with your friends, your family, and your children. People are wondering what happened to you. And the shame kind of puts this wedge in between everyone, because you don't want to tell everyone what is going on, because there's just so much shame around abuse. And for the people that are dealing with this, it's very difficult, this aspect of things, and you're not alone, and you've done nothing wrong for anyone who's feeling like this right now. And then when it comes specifically to children, we have a quote here, which is, "He took our daughter from school when she was 10 and attempted to take our son, but he wouldn't go with him. Our daughter was happy to stay as he had more money than me, and he was able to buy her whatever she wanted. He also did a very good job of turning her against me. He tried to get custody of both kids through the courts, but withdrew his application when he realized social services weren't going to back him for custody. I couldn't afford to launch my own case at the time, and my daughter would have said that she didn't want to stay with me anyway. But more recently, I have developed a close relationship with my daughter, and we do have regular contact. But I still don't believe that she will ever come back to live with me. And once again, this goes back to parental alienation and, the loss of children. And that's a huge loss for a parent to go through. And my heart goes out to everyone who's dealing with this as well. And up next, we have the loss of health and the loss of sleep. And, a lot of people who are going through abuse, they have a lot of sleepless nights. There could be sleep deprivation going on as well during that time. And then the aftermath, they might have nightmares and things like that, insomnia. They could have ruminating thoughts about the abuser, and there's a loss of sleep that goes on there. And then when it comes to health, in general, we hear so many stories when it comes to hair falling out, people getting specific types of diseases can happen. Just a lot of different things can happen when you are being worn down by an abuser, and your health can go really downhill. You're just constantly under the state of attack. Also the things that can happen, depression can really set in when it comes to this type of abuse, because you're feeling unworthy, you're feeling worthless for months or even years after being told maybe how useless you might be or stupid that you might be. You're being manipulated, and there's PTSD that might happen with fight or flight responses, freezing responses. You have this chronic hypervigilance going on, and all of this stuff can really affect your health. And there's just so many different health problems that can happen when it comes to being abused, and in the aftermath, how long it takes to recover from that. But your body hopefully does recover in the aftermath, but it takes a while. So, that is the loss of health and sleep.
This episode is sponsored by Factor. With the fall season around the corner, we all get busier, and taking the time to create full healthy meals isn't easy. And that's why Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you eat healthy and quickly with their chef-prepared meals that get delivered straight to your door. I'm so busy these days that I need all the support I can get to help me through my day, and having prepared food ready in 2 minutes once it gets to my door is the kind of support that I need. Plus, I'm eating healthy too. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are just ready in 2 minutes. All you have to do is heat it up and enjoy. Get back to doing what you want to do, and for me, that is making the show. You can choose from 34 plus weekly flavored packed dietitian approved healthy meals, lunches to go that have no microwave needed. This August, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor packed meals delivered to your door and ready in 2 minutes. Head to factormeals.com/nap50 and use code nap50 to get 50% off. That's code nap50 at factormeals.com/nap50 to get 50% off.
And up next, we have the loss of possessions, home, finances, jobs. One person wrote, "I lost everything I own materially. I had to leave my home, leaving everything I owned behind, including my clothes." Another quote is, "He wiped 40 years of my life. While I lived at this place, he made copies of my house keys and siphoned all of my possessions, jewelry, some of which were heirlooms, antiques collected over the years of travel, furnishings, ornaments, crystals, silver, clothes, books, my holiday movies, photos of my travels, thousands upon thousands of dollars worth. He'd gone shopping at my house." And another quote that we have here is, "I have to rebuild from scratch. He maxed out everything in my name. Now I need a lawyer to get half the house back." So this is where you just have a loss of possessions, home, finances. Either during the relationship, you might be with someone who is just really terrible with money, someone who's constantly overspending, spending your money, maxing out your credit cards, just terrible with money as a whole. And then you have also the people in the aftermath who, don't want you to have anything. They just want to win at all costs. So they're trying to take your home from you, take your finances from you, your possessions. You could be financially abused in so many different ways, never allowed to have money in the first place. And, you have the loss of those finances, loss of your financial freedom, and even attacking your job, trying to have you lose your job. You're getting in the way of that job. And that comes to even if you have kids and you're the primary caregiver and they're supposed to take the kid from you and you have to go to work, and then they don't do that and they do it on purpose. And that affects you losing a job. And we hear it so many times. And, loss of possessions, home and finances and job are a big part of abuse. And up next, we have the loss of reputation. And for this, someone could be sabotaging to your doctor, law enforcement agent, a counselor for a very long time, to people at school, teachers, anyone in that administration, coaches, things like that, to families, to friends. One quote we have here is, "He badmouthed me to anyone who would listen. I only found out after I left him and he was visiting some mutual friends, and they told me the things that he said about me. He told them that I was the worst on the planet." Right here, when it comes to the loss of reputation, you're getting someone who's setting out these smear campaigns against you, and they're doing anything that they can. And in many instances, it's impossible to get this reputation back. They did the job that they wanted to do, and you just kind of have to deal with the fact that has happened. And loss of reputation is a big thing. And, if you're going to be going to court, they really want you to have a terrible reputation, and they'll do anything to smear you to get that. So loss of reputation is a big thing when it comes to domestic violence, narcissistic abuse. And the next one we have on our list is the loss of hobbies and interests. So a quote that we have here is, "In the relationship, I lost my sense of self and my self-worth. The abuser tore away at me as if he was systematically trying to break me. There was nothing I could do, from the simplest things in life, turning the thermostat on for air, for heat, talking to my family on the phone, shutting a car door. They would just all lead to an excuse for an argument with him tearing away at me. I planted flowers and shrubs, and the plants were mowed down, or the weed eater was used to shred the plants. At first, I thought this might have been an accident, until it just happened repeatedly. I quit and I gave up planting. All of this planting gave me joy, and now it was removed." So here is where, you're kind of, in this case specifically, they were just kind of undermining them and destroying the hobby that they liked most. But in other cases, you might have them nitpick at the things that you like doing, nitpick at your hobbies, nitpick at your interests, put down those things and continuously do so. And by doing so, they make it just unenjoyable. They take the joy of that thing away from you, and they really put this mark on it that you don't want to do it anymore. They've tainted it in every single way, and you lose, your hobbies, you lose your interests, and you lose the joy of doing them, poisoned. And it's hard to kind of get back into them at all because of your thought process on it now and where it takes you back to. So that is the loss of hobbies and interests. And then the last one that we have on our list for this, before we get into therapy kind of stuff, is the loss of feelings. And someone wrote, "I lost the ability to feel, because if I went into thinking deeply about everything that happened, how this affected my family, how this affected my children, shame would come up. There'd be a lot of emotional hurt that would come up. And the best thing for me to do was to not feel anything, was to not think at all, and everything became numb." So when it comes to the loss of feelings in, let's say, numbness here, someone starts to avoid their feelings as a whole. Their feelings become scary. They don't want to delve into what happened. There's a lot of trauma going on, and the best thing to do is kind of dissociate in a lot of ways and avoid everything that has happened. And so many people do this to avoid those feelings. If it's guilt or if it's shame, it's just hurt and it's pain. And, it goes on during the relationship and after the relationship, and people not wanting to, or people just trying to avoid those feelings as a whole. Some of us are head thinkers, some of us are feelers. So head thinkers have trouble feeling anyway. But when it comes to like the loss of feelings and avoiding those feelings, it's a really big thing. And that is part of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. So now that we've talked about all these things that we've lost when it comes to abuse, when it comes to domestic violence, a lot of people end up going to therapy. And when we're talking about loss, we're talking about grief. So I think it's important that when you do go see a therapist, that it's someone who knows about grief. And also for some people out there, when you go to therapy, depending on your circumstances and your cultural circumstances, it's having some therapist that is with you who understands the culture you're coming from, whether it be race, whether it be religion, whether it be social economic status. It's important to have an understanding from your therapist from that point of view as well, that they can meet you where you're at and they can understand exactly what you're going through, so they don't gaslight you like society might have gaslit you during the process as well. Because you might be gaslit by the abuser in your life, who could be a family member, who could be a friend, who could be your partner, but you can also be gaslit by society, specifically when trying to get out of these processes or trying to get out of these relationships as well. So when it comes to a therapist, when it comes to this type of loss and in the aftermath, hopefully you can find a therapist that understands the dynamics of abuse and of abusive relationships and doesn't engage in blaming you or pathologizing you when it comes to this type of abuse. You want someone who is trauma or trauma-informed when they come to their practices. And a type of therapy could be somatic therapies, and those somatic therapies help unlock trauma stuck in your body and for your body to also be your guide. There's emotions-focused therapy, and with emotions-focused therapy, it's done to gain awareness of your emotions, as these relationships could have had you like all over the place, not allowing you to have your emotions or you not trusting your emotions. And with emotions-focused therapy, it helps you open up so you are welcoming these emotions, because for a lot of people, as we stated before, we're not allowed to have specific emotions, or they shut themselves down because it's too scary. And they allow your emotions to flow freely without restrictions. They help regulate your emotions so they don't overwhelm you. And it's a process where you can really start describing how you're feeling in detail and understanding the whys behind your emotions. And I think this is very important, this type of therapy, for a lot of people. And it's something that we do on the show, which is we love it when people start describing their feelings, because when you describe your feelings, you're able to give language to someone, and that language really helps you start processing what you're going for and giving words to, the things that are going on in your body. And it's just very helpful. And this can help you communicate to other people how you're actually feeling. And it really opens up a whole new world. It creates movement, either if you're in the relationship or out of the relationship, to really just start moving forward and moving through things. And it's really helpful to get to that point, to understand and, say your emotions and welcome them and not be afraid of them. So emotions-focused therapy is a big one. Another type of therapy is cognitive processing trauma therapy. And this is, challenging your beliefs. So it has part of the CBT in it, but it's about challenging the beliefs that the abuser might have had made you believe about yourself, about life, about relationships. They might have told you that you were dumb and now you believe that you are dumb. A cognitive processing trauma therapy, this can really help challenge the beliefs that the abuser might have implanted inside of you. Also, there is prolonged exposure therapy and prolonged exposure therapy. And with this type of therapy, this shows you how to kind of gradually approach memories, situations, and emotions that are related to past traumas, so that avoidance is like reduced, and you're able to kind of go through those memories with a little bit more freedom restored to it, and it's just done at a gradual approach. And then there's EMDR, and with EMDR, it encourages you to like briefly focus on difficult memories while bilateral stimulation takes place, but that's the eye movement. And this can decrease the vividness and intensity of emotions connected to those memories, which I guess helps you go and move through them in an easier way, in a less threatening way. So things just aren't as scary as they were before. And then the last one on our list of the modalities is brief eclectic therapy, which is a combination of a bunch of different things. So it's a specific approach of helping clients deal with and overcome a traumatic event, and it combines elements of CBT, psychodynamic therapies, a focus on interpreting and processing emotions and thoughts, and a focus of brief eclectic therapy is on the emotions of guilt and shame that often occur in the aftermath of a traumatic experience. So that's another therapy that you might find useful when it comes to dealing with trauma and dealing with a loss and shame in the aftermath of all these different types of losses of going through an abusive relationship. So that is it for our episode today. I hope that you found it useful. I hope you found it validating for the experiences that you are going through. And I hope that everything that was mentioned today just helped in any sort of way with what you're going through, either if you're in the relationship still or outside of the relationship. And if it helped you, send me an email and telling me that you enjoyed this episode and helpful. And if there's other episodes like this where we can kind of validate your feelings, we might do episodes on specific feelings in the future. If anything like that interests you, please let us know and we will try and make an episode about it. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to be a guest on our Survivor Story episodes, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. At the top of the page, there's a button that says Guest Form. When you click on that button, it takes you to our Guest Form page. There you can read all of our instructions and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we asked for. Also, at our website, we have our very own safe social network, our own support group. So if you want to join our support group, go to narcissistapocalypse.com. Top of the page, there's a button that says support group. When you click on that button, it takes you to our support group page, and there you will see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday night, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We also have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. And it is a wonderful group of people on there, and you can share your experiences and make friends as well. So if you need support, join our support group today. And if you need even more support, please do visit our friends at domesticshelters.org. At domesticshelters.org, they have articles and resources to help you make sense of what you're dealing with. They have every phone number, email address, and web address for shelters and agencies, no matter how big or small the town you are in. Domesticshelters.org has it there. It is a wonderful free resource and a wonderful organization. So if you need extra support, please do go to domesticshelters.org. And we here at Narcissist Apocalypse have a new friend to the show, and they are an organization called Shelter Movers, and they can be reached at sheltermovers.com. And Shelter Movers helps survivors of domestic violence transition to a better and safer life. And it is a volunteer organization, a donor-supported organization, charitable organization as well. And what they do is they help coordinate moves for people who are getting out of domestic violence. It's an interesting part of the domestic violence escape process. And they help you get to safety, and they also help get your things out of your home and into storage, all of your belongings into storage. And they can do this for your pets as well, your livestock too. It's a wonderful organization. It is in Canada, and they're hoping to move into the United States. So if you need help from them or just want to donate to them, please go to sheltermovers.com. And that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and learned from it. And I hope you have a good night.